Thank you all for joining us for the Collaboration and Communication Team Building and Teamwork Workshop. Joining us today are Sam Palmer, Assistant Director of Clark County Fire Prevention, Jason Frank, Assistant Athletic Director at Grand Canyon University, and Elizabeth Jost, Associate Director of Admissions at UNLV Graduate College. They are going to be providing you with advice on how to build a team that collaborates and communicates effectively. So I'm going to hand it over to them to introduce themselves, and then we will open it up to questions. So I will pass it on to Jason.
All right, thank you, Nevna. My name is Jason Frank. As Nevna mentioned, I'm the Assistant Athletic Director for Student Athlete Development at Grand Canyon University. This is the start of my 6th year at GCU. Prior to that, I was at the University of South Florida for 5 years, working in a similar role with student athlete development, academic support. Before that, I was at University of Wyoming for 2 years, getting kind of the start in a full-time role in college athletics. So yes, I moved from Las Vegas after finishing my master's at UNLV in 2008, moved from Las Vegas to Laramie, Wyoming. Don't do that. That's a bit of advice. It was a very rough transition socially, personally, but a very good professional experience. Oh, we are recording this on YouTube. Actually, maybe let's go back and edit that out so that I don't get hate mail from Laramie, Wyoming. But like I said, great experience there at Wyoming. I worked with a bunch of different sports on academic support, oversaw the student athlete tutoring program there, and then moved on to USF in Tampa and worked the football program, softball program, oversaw tutoring there. And then a little over 5 years ago, I moved to Phoenix. So for those of you who don't know, GCU is in Phoenix, and I've been here since. I've had a few title promotions. I work with the baseball and women's basketball programs, and then oversee our student athlete development academic support staff, which right now there are a total of 7 full-time staff members, including me on that staff. So thank you for having me, and I'll turn it over to Sam.
Good afternoon. I'm Sam Palmer. Thanks for the invite. Overall, I'm the Assistant Director for the Clark County Department of Building and Fire Prevention. I'm almost a Las Vegas native. I've been here 40 plus years. Most of high school here, my dad was Air Force, most of high school, UNLV to start with, UNLV as a graduate as geological engineering, and then back to UNR, and then back to UNLV with a master's in business. Overall, I'm an engineer by background, but I'm also a manager, leader by background, and glad to help. Teamwork is a very important topic to work on. I mean, that's basically what all our people, what all of our businesses are, is people. But like I said, I've been here for many, many years. I know the university very well, both north and south, and always glad to help.
All right, and I'm Elizabeth Jost. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at the Grad College, so you've probably seen my name on emails and communications that you've gotten from the Grad College. I have worked at UNLV for 13 years. It's basically the only real professional job I've ever had. So right out of getting my undergrad degree at UNLV in 2007, jumped right into an admissions job in law school admissions. And then I've been with the Grad College for about 5 years, and I've moved up a little bit through there. And we normally have a team of about 11 to 12 people that covers 3 areas of the Graduate College: the Welcome Center, recruitment, and admissions. Because of COVID, our team has shrunk a little bit, so now we're down to 8. So I have to ask my 8-man team to do a lot during the day to keep the trains running on time. And I think we've been pretty successful at that. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. And I'm also pursuing a graduate degree right now after 13 years out of being out of school. So I'm right there along with you.
Thank you, Liz. So let's jump right into it with the following question. What are some ways you can establish group harmony from the beginning? And how can you work to sustain that consensus and keep up group motivation?
I'll go ahead and start. As far as establishing group harmony from the beginning, each organization, be that a commercial firm, a university, a government agency, et cetera, it still comes back down to people and developing that group harmony with the people, with your group. That's the critical part. Sometimes you have the luxury, of being able to put the team together. Sometimes you're just cast into a team and that's it. That's who you got, and you got to deal with it. But group harmony is critical, for the success of the operations. At the end of the day, we all have a job to do, and maybe graduate admissions, it may be, the signing off new buildings, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, we got to do our job well, and that goes back to having a good, solid team. You've got to have people that you can count on and work with. The key to me is once you have a team, either you select or you're forced into it, you've got to get to know the people. Once you get to know the people and understand a little bit about them, who they are, their backgrounds, their skills, etc., it's amazing the commonalities that people come across with. And once you have a common theme or a common element, then you start building a relationship. I'm not saying everybody's going to be buddy and go out to dinner after in the evening. No, but at the end of the day, when you're there 8, 10, 12 hours a day working, you've got to have a relationship with those individuals on your team, and you got to have a little fun. And so it's what's better way to have a little fun is to get to know them, work with them, build that trust and that rapport, and continue working from there.
Yeah, that's excellent, Sam. I agree 100%. It is about people. It's about relationships. It's about getting to know them. I think Sam just mentioned trust, building trust. Showing that demonstrating that your team can trust you, and that you can trust, and trying to establish that you can trust them, that you care about them. I think those are some big goals as you try to build that harmony. We work with student athletes, our whole staff. So even the 2 new people we just hired who are in their first full-time job, they're leaders too in their role, and that they're leading student athletes and working to be positive influences on them. And it all starts with trusting, that trust, and showing that you care and that you want them to be successful. And it goes as you keep moving up and building the professional team. It's the same type of thing where it's trust and showing that you care and getting to know people, knowing what motivates them. And like Sam said, also, have some fun and do some things that are fun. So it's not all just serious 100% of the time, but learning what motivates people and what makes them tick, and using that to drive some of the decisions you make and how you organize your team. And so, yeah, building harmony all kind of starts with getting to know people and developing trusting, positive relationships.
I think that's something that's really important from the very beginning, is to have a plan for robust training. So everybody on my team has to know how to do the same things the same way. So making sure they're set up for success with instruction sheets, with shadowing programs or things like that. I make new student workers shadow with older student workers, and everybody from student worker to professional staff has to know how to process X thing in X way correctly. So everybody works off the same instruction sheet. Everybody has to kind of do the same things every day. So I think that kind of establishes a bit of harmony there, with like knowing we're all in this together. And then I believe that like the group culture really comes top down from the supervisors. So you're in charge of establishing that culture from the outset. So if you don't have a collegial atmosphere right from the beginning, that's where resentment starts to build. So you have to be able to let things roll off your shoulders as a team manager or a team lead, and make sure that your staff members have the security and safety to not only do their job, but like bring up stuff that maybe is not working, or feel confident enough to say, I'm having trouble with this concept. Can I get more training? Can I get more help? And I find it really important to establish that mistakes are going to happen from the beginning, and we don't have to feel bad about that, but we can use them to learn and grow. And so if I have that like psychological safety happening with my team, then we can handle anything that comes at us.
Liz, Jason.
Sorry. I just want to say I think it's interesting that Liz talked about with her team. Everybody kind of does things a certain way, and it's by the book. And like with our team, we give a lot of autonomy. But with that, even though we're not looking over their shoulder saying you have to do things exactly like this when you meet with students, you have to do everything exactly by the book 100% of the time. That's a great opportunity for people within the team to share ideas with each other. Hey, how do you handle working with this type of student? How do you structure your day? And it's not like, oh, you have to do this, but you share ideas and you have that collaborative attitude that can go there. So whether you have like a by the book, everybody's on the same script, and Liz just talked about how that can build camaraderie as well. But even if it's not like that, there's still a lot of great opportunities to build that harmony.
Liz, Jason, both great comments and whatnot. You know, one of the best businesses I've seen out there, and this is my personal opinion, is Southwest Airlines. You know, Southwest Airlines built a business flying the same airplane every day, day in, day out. Everybody is trained in the same operations of that aircraft. Now, everybody's unique, everybody's individualist, and everybody has their own skill sets, but you also have a common theme. And that, to me, it sounds sort of corny, but man, I have never seen such happy people working on Southwest Airlines in comparison to a lot of the other airlines. Some of the other airlines, man, you even hate. It almost feels like you're being an inconvenience to the staff coming on board. But Southwest is very different. But that builds good harmony when people understand their job. Building harmony.
Thank you all. So we have a question in the chat here. If you are among a team with no officially assigned leader, how do you claim that leadership role of the team and make everyone follow you without triggering a feeling of competition from the team members?
That's a toughie, right? That's a good one. Well, I feel like if you are going to take personal ownership and leadership in a group, that's not really a bad thing. In jobs before that I've had, like just going that extra mile and doing that extra step really made me a standout and was able to get promoted. So I understand that you don't necessarily want to cause conflict between your team members, but it also can be a way for you to move up in your organization. Without triggering feelings of competition, like do my panel mates have any other ideas?
That's a good challenge. That's a great question, because at the end of the day, you know, you need to have a little bit of parameters and groundwork for what is it you're trying to do. If you're thrust into a team and you're given the task to solve a problem or something, first off, do you need a leader? A lot of us are trained that you must have a leader, A, B, C, and do things sequentially and whatnot. Sometimes that's not the best way to solve issues. It depends on what the situation is and whatnot. But when there's no apparent leader, it's pretty quickly. It doesn't take very long when people start talking and start working back and forth together. There's some natural leaders that sort of evolve to the top, and you know, whether or not they're in command or have the direct authority to do something versus they're informal and they have the ability to lead. Those are two different things. But most people will warm up to the natural leaders that are not taking advantage of each other. But if they're there to run roughshod over everybody, your camaraderie, your teamwork, and everything else, it goes to pot.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the natural leaders emerge. I'm thinking back to I was on the baseball team at Central Michigan, which is where I did my undergrad, and I remember one time we had a freshman who tried to be a team leader. He tried to speak up in a team meeting. Everybody kind of looked at him like, "Wait, you just got here. Who are you to speak up?" And you know, people some of the seniors had to kind of pull him aside, like, "Look, you know, it's nice that you care, but you got to kind of know where you are right now." And so having respect of the rest of the group, I think that's a big thing, and then that's where like the natural leaders emerge. You know, if everybody else, if the majority of the rest of the group respects you, I think you can have a lot more influence than if they don't have the respect, or if they're kind of undecided or unsure, if you're brand new to the group that might already be established. I think too, with just like within our team, with our student athlete development staff, is that we kind of look, even though I might have a higher title than some of the other staff members, we're all leaders, and we all have to work together for the best interest of our student athletes and for our department. And I think we all understand that, and the competitive aspect of that, it's like, okay, what's best for the department and our student athletes, and kind of check your ego at the door. I think that's what's worked in our situation, at least.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Like some people, there's strengths and weaknesses, right? So some people are way more comfortable like being a behind the scenes person, and they give you an incredibly great work product, and so you know to focus on that strength of theirs. While others like being in a more public setting, you know, extroverts versus introverts or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be everybody on the team as a leader either. There's, you know, different kinds of work styles, and giving your team members that autonomy to pick what things they're passionate about or things that help them succeed all leads towards greater team harmony.
And leadership doesn't always have to be standing up and talking or giving speeches or anything like that. I'm reminded of, there's a quote, the Hall of Fame baseball player Joe DiMaggio said, "A person always doing his or her best becomes a natural leader just by example."
Well said. Well said. There's a very large heavy highway contractor here in town that, other than the owner, no one has titles in their organization chart. You know, us, we go to formal business schools or we go to formal training. We always look for the org charts and who's who, who's what, you know, the titles, etc. They have no titles, and they have hundreds of staff, and they build major projects. Each project has a project coordinator. You could call them the lead, and they are the lead, but they don't have all the authority that you would think they have. Their job is to get the job done, and everybody else's job is to get the job done. And if he needs, you know, certain type of skill sets on, you know, for this week or next week, whatever, he pulls those staff over and he works with them. But they don't have a formal org chart. And I always thought that was weird, but they are one of the most. They are the largest, the general contractor, heavy contractor here in town, and they've done very well. So a lot depends on how you set your organization up.
Thank you. So kind of going off of being a team member, how do you hold your team accountable and ensure that everyone is participating and doing their part in collaborating, especially if you don't have that designated leader on the team?
I think data is really important sometimes. So, you know, and Jason might work out of like a client relationship management tool like we do, but like I can track performance on my team members. So I can have meetings with them that says like, hey, you only answered 25% of the emails that came in this month. You know, what's going on? Or you only did so many evaluations and you're underperforming. So we need to get it back to like an even level. And then we can have a discussion about ways I can support them, or something that, you know, they're maybe not understanding about the processes, or something in their day that I might not even know about that's, you know, cutting into their time. Like maybe they're getting a ton of phone calls and I didn't even realize that, and they could use a little phone support. So for me, I feel like it's easy because I can pull the data, but that's not always the same in other organizations.
Yeah, much more subjective, like with what our team does, and we each have our assigned teams, but you can't just go based off of the team GPA. Oh, this team, the tennis team has a high team GPA, that their advisor must be doing really well, or the men's basketball team has a low GPA, so their academic coordinator must not know what's going on. It's definitely not. You can't just go based off the numbers and that. So it's a lot of. I mean, getting some feedback from the students, getting feedback from coaches, administrators, and see how just more from a subjective point of view things are going with each staff member, and it's the relationships as well, where meeting with them on a frequent basis, informally and then formally. So I meet with each of our staff members in a designated 30 minutes per week, which sometimes depending on the staff member, it might turn into an hour or more, which, I mean, not like it's a bad thing. It's discussing a lot of different ideas and things inside and outside of work. And hey, what's working for you? Where do you feel you're struggling right now? So it becomes a little bit more of a subjective thing than, oh, you didn't hit this goal or this specific number that you can measure. So a little bit more challenging, but I think a lot of it goes back to those relationships and communicating frequently and trying to just work with them on establishing what goals they have for themselves and how well they're meeting the objectives, the things that they can control that put them in a position to meet those goals.
The hard metrics, the accounting metrics, your profitability, your revenue, your collections, and I'm talking on both the private side and the public side. The hard metrics, you can count those very easily, and you can give everybody goals, guidelines, et cetera, on what to do and how you should do it. But like Jason was saying, on some of the soft metrics, that's tough. On the customer relations and the customer building and the marketing side of the house, how well are you doing? You are what you measure, and I agree with that to some extent. But you also have to be very careful on what you measure. If all you're going to measure is how many phone calls you do in a day, then okay, I'll focus on that, and I won't take care of my customers. I'll just return phone calls. Or if I'm going to measure, the number of inspections per inspector per day, and that's all I'm going to focus on. You really got to be careful on your metrics, to really maintain it. The good, to me, good close communication, not overshadowing, not putting your thumb on somebody, but good communications. What's our plan for the week? What are we trying to get done this week? And let the staff maintain that and run with it, because otherwise you'll get back into the proverbial government job where all we're doing is just answering the phone and clicking out paper. It's a challenge.
And I'll take it back to training. Like, every member of my team is cross-trained, even if it's like not their normal day-to-day process. So if we have a presentation and someone's sick, someone could feasibly go do the presentation, and we can back each other up and we can have each other's backs, especially when things get really busy. So nobody feels like siloed or they're like being taken advantage of or things like that. Like, everybody knows how to do the different aspects of the job. Even if like I know how to do everything, even though I'm not in there every day doing evals or posting decision letters, I know how to do it, and I will do it for my team when they need help. So I think cross-training is so important too, to just maintain that level of, proper delegation and all that good stuff.
Thank you.
It was funny, back on the metric side of the house. Sorry, on the metric side of the house, invariably, you'll get when you're measuring the numbers, whatever those numbers may be, and you have a difficult client or a challenging client come up, but they're a profitable client. Okay, so what do? You usually give it to your best team member. Well, your best team member, they'll take on the challenge, because that's usually who they are. They want to excel and do well with that client and with the company, et cetera, et cetera. But invariably, the metrics start to tank because they're a tough customer, and they knew that going into it. And you got to balance those metrics. Whatever you're accounting for, you got to balance those metrics, because they're taking care of a difficult client. And we knew going into it that their metrics are going to get messed up. But at the same time, they're making it through, they're making progress, and you're making money off the client. It's not an easy chore. You've got to really know what's going on.
Thank you.
That mixed methods research, the qualitative, like a real life version of that.
Yeah.
So our next question in the chat is, what are some of the methods that you have used to avoid or resolve conflicts in teams?
Other than duels? People are people. You get more than one person in a room, you're going to have conflict. That's a given, and that's called life. You've got to learn how to deal with conflict, and it may be quiet, peaceful conflict, or it may be all-out war. Who knows? But you got to be able to deal with it. And historically, what I have seen is you've got to bring it to the table, keep it on top of the table, and deal with it quickly, and talk with the individuals with good, open communications. hopefully sometimes it's just a matter of misunderstandings and differences and whatnot. Sometimes there's hardcore philosophical differences, but you've got to get it on the table and discuss it and get it out there, because if you let it fester, if it's bad, it doesn't matter what you do. If it's bad, it's going to stink. So you might as well deal with it up front on day one, rather than let it, hide it under the table for a week or 2 weeks, whatever. It's just going to get worse. So deal with it up front.
Going off of that, and I'll talk a little bit about the relationship I had with my boss, who I met when I was in grad school at UNLV. He had gotten out of football coaching and became an academic advisor at UNLV. We worked together when I was in grad school. He hired me at South Florida. He talked me into coming to Grand Canyon when he took a position at GCU. And so I worked with him for about 11 or 12 years. He just left GCU a couple months ago. But especially when I got to USF, he and I would get into shouting matches, disagreements. I mean, this may be a little extreme. I mean, people would duck for cover. It was explosive. I mean, there were, language and like we'd get after it, and people like, wow, they hate each other. But we'd go to lunch 5 minutes later, and everything was fine. But I think not that it always has to be that aggressive or explosive. I mean, he's a former football coach. I was a former athlete. That's just kind of how we connected. But as Sam talked about, getting things out on the table and dealing with it head on, that's exactly what we did. And I always describe it like this: if he was here on some issue and I was here, the more that we would yell and scream and argue over time, the more we started coming to understand, even if we didn't agree or completely flip our position, the more we understood the other person's point of view. And I think that helped us work together for so long, was that even if we didn't always see eye to eye on everything, we understood where the other person was coming from and what the motivations were, because we didn't hide it. We didn't hide our feelings or our thoughts. We got it right out there. And I think that was something that, again, not that you have to be that aggressive with it, but dealing with things head on, and you learn more about the other person. It just helps your working relationship, I think, the more that you can do that and be honest and share your thoughts and don't hide. If you really don't think something's right, hopefully you have that ability to speak up, or if you're in a management leadership position, getting your staff to be comfortable to challenge you if they don't agree with you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, one of the hardest lessons I had to learn as a supervisor was that you can't really avoid conflict. So, trying to avoid conflict is not the answer, because you're going to placate and you're going to do things that could be detrimental to the organization, could be detrimental to performance because certain people won't work together or whatever. So like Sam said, it'll just fester. And, someone who is a little conflict averse like myself, had to learn to be a mediator or a listener or what have you. And hopefully, if you've established a good organizational culture from the beginning, conflicts will be minimal and you can nip them in the bud, or like have a listening session with a mediator or something like that. But you can't be afraid of it. That's the hardest thing, right? We can't avoid it. So then we should deal with it fairly and honestly.
Well said. Most people avoid it, and that's where the trouble begins.
Yeah.
But when you do get into it, you always got to remember, what is the ultimate goal? What's the ultimate objective? What are we trying to solve? What do we do? What's the issue? If it's a straight up HR issue that somebody didn't follow the policy procedures, that's one thing. But typically the big discussions, the big debates or philosophical or not, what's the ultimate goal? At building and fire prevention, our ultimate goal is to provide a safe environment. Safe built environment is the words we use. So at the end of the day, regardless what we're discussing or arguing or whatever, we always know that we want to build a safe building. And so we've eventually worked the edges off, and we can come to agreement, hopefully, and usually come to agreement on what's the best way to build a safe building. Are we dealing in the weeds, or is this truly a life safety issue that we have to address straight up? A lot of times we're dealing in the weeds. We say, let's just move on. This is silly. But if it's a life safety issue, no, we bring it to the table. We bring everybody to the table and say, guys, we got a problem. We need to resolve it.
So we just all talked about the importance of communication. Can you all provide us with some tips for maintaining effective team communication, and what does good communication look like?
Everything's changed with COVID, right? It's tough because you can't just walk down to someone's office anymore and have a conversation, and sometimes tone is lost through IM and things like that. So I try to get face to face with my team at least once a week and do like personal check-ins. But a lot of people on my team are comfortable with IM, and so that's kind of like our main mode. We have a group chat where people can bring up updates and things like that, but also can post like memes and jokes and, you know, maintain that kind of collegial atmosphere, people posting pictures of their pets or whatever. But I mean, we've been using Slack, which is awesome. Like Nev knows how we can have different rooms for different things and different working groups for different things, so everything doesn't get lost in the massive scroll, right? So you can go back into recruitment and admissions and be like, oh, I remember them saying that there was an event that was posted that we should like get on our website or something like that. So it's definitely different now.
Very different. You know, there was an old commercial a long time ago. It was one of the financial services folks, and they had just lost a big client, and they couldn't figure out why they lost a big client. And the boss was talking to staff and saying, "Hey, what was our issue? What was the problem? Why did we lose it?" No one could answer the question because no one had talked to the client. And so he did the old-fashioned way. He got on the airplane and he flew over there to go talk to the client. Good, open communications. Me, when there's issues, you know, I want people with good, honest, open feedback. You know, and if I've got an issue with the client or they have an issue with me, I pick up the phone. You bite the bullet. It's going to hurt. Don't get me wrong, but you bite the bullet, pick up the phone, call them, and talk to them. Now, I had a younger manager, and he says, "Sam, I'm not going to call him. I'll email him." And we went back and forth, call, email, text, whatever, however you want to say it. But at the end of the day, the communication has to occur. And different folks are more comfortable doing this way or that way. You have to find a way that's comfortable, that still portrays a clear, open message on what the issues are, and you go from there.
I think having a mix of formal and informal communication is important. So we meet as a staff every Monday at 9 o'clock. Lately, it's been over Zoom, of course, and I mentioned it earlier. I meet one-on-one in a formal 30-minute scheduled time with each member of our staff, and sometimes I have a list of things I want to cover. Sometimes they come with a couple of questions, and sometimes it's just like, hey, how's everything going, and just kind of getting to know them that way. We do have. We are back in the office a little bit right now, but it's 6 of us have offices in the same building, and we have a rotation where only 3 of us are in there at a time. And the way the rotation works out, there are 2 people who I'm never in the office when they are, and I think everybody has a couple people in that rotation who they don't see. And so that's been a little bit of a challenge where I can still go and stop by offices with some of the coworkers and just check in informally, but a couple of them I can't right now. And we've talked about ways to kind of address that, maybe having like a more of an informal meeting through Zoom on Friday afternoons where we can do breakout rooms. Everybody can just kind of catch up with each other with no agenda and just kind of chat. You know, in the past, we did certain things, like we would do happy hours on Friday afternoons. That was always something. We did something a couple of years ago. We call it the OSAD games. As our office is the Office of Student Athlete Development, and so we picked one game for each one of our teams, and we would go as a group to watch. So we went to a men's soccer game, we went to a baseball game, we went to a basketball game, and I think we got just about all of our teams, and just a chance to show support, but then also to get to know each other a little bit better as well. So just trying to mix in the formal and informal. We have a group meet that we use for important things. I just send a reminder about, hey, if you have any agenda items for Monday's meetings, send them to me by 4 o'clock. But then also if people come across funny things or something that's a little bit more lighthearted, they can put that on there as well.
Jason, you brought up a good point. A year or two ago, I was with a group of the engineering students over at UNLV, and there was probably 30 or 40 in the room, and they were talking just about this: good communications, what can we do to build morale, etc. And I said, hey, let's go see a football game. I said, by a show of hand, who's been to a football game? Not a single person in that room raised their hand. And so, okay, well then, okay, forget that. Let's go to a basketball game. Who's been to a basketball game? You know, 1 or 2 people said they actually been to a UNLV basketball game. I says, guy, you're missing the boat. We have got to build that team, get that camaraderie, that morale builder together. But yeah, oh yeah, playing the games, however you want to say that, that's a good thing. Absolutely. You got to have some fun.
Thank you all. So our next question in the chat here is, as a leader, what type of management style do you advise to be used for a challenging team member?
I think avoiding a one-size-fits-all mentality can help. So people learn in different ways, people grow in different ways, and you have to be flexible as a leader to understand your team members and like what they're good at, what they need work on, and things like that. So like understanding the strengths and weaknesses of your team, and then keeping an open door policy across the board for everyone. And literally my door is always open at the office. The only time I close it is if I'm in a meeting or something like that. But you can't operate under one size fits all anymore. And you know, everyone has different backgrounds, everyone has different experiences. So once you do that, then you can have a meeting with your team member if they're not meeting expectations or if they're causing conflict where they shouldn't be. Then you can have an open, honest communication and be like, hey, what is it that's not working for you here? Like, what can I do to help you?
Those are good points. And one of the key issues that throughout my life is dealing with challenging people is tough. But at the same time, you learn as much as they do if you do it right. And challenging people are good to have. You can't just have a team of all the same. You know, and if everybody nods their head, yes, we're all in agreement. No, that's kumbaya. We don't need that. We want to try and get to find the right thing to do. And you need people to challenge you, but you can't take it personal. You got to take yourself out of the picture and say, okay, how do I listen to this person? How do I get into this person's head and help them? This is what I need. How can I help guide them to show them, okay, I need this and this. How can you do it better or whatever? But you just can't take it personal. People are people. And I'm an optimist, and I believe all people can do good things if they're motivated and they're charged with the right directions and whatnot. But you as a leader, you got to find that way out and find a way to deal with that challenging individual. It's tough.
Yeah, and again, a theme that has popped up through a lot of our answers is getting to know people and developing those relationships. So if you have a challenging team member, like Liz says, it can't be like one size fits all. What might work with one team member might not work at all with the other team member. I think one thing that can work sometimes is you know, let's say you see a team member and you want them to do a certain thing. With some, you might be able to just directly tell them, hey, you need to really start doing this. With others, the better approach, especially if it's a challenging team member, it might be, hey, have you ever thought about maybe doing it this way? What would you think about that? You know, and make it more where they think about it and it's kind of their idea. That's one way I think of dealing with challenging people. Sam talked about earlier. Sometimes you're able to pick your team, and sometimes you're not. Fortunately, at GCU, when we got here, we've been able to hire so the other 6 members of our team, I've had a hand in hiring all of them, or have led the search or made the final decision on most of them. And so that's prevented a little bit of having to deal with some of the bigger challenges because we knew kind of what we were getting into when we hired all of them. But there are still obviously going to be some issues here and there. And I think having that's at least with our team, having some of those soft approaches versus do this, don't do that. And, hey, what do you think about this? Make it like Dale Carnegie wrote about that, ask questions instead of give direct orders. And so I think that's a good approach in general. But again, there's no one size fits all.
Thank you. Can you speak a little bit about what the characteristics of a good team player are?
Listening is probably one of the best characteristics I've seen. If you don't listen to the other individual, it's going to be tough to come together as a team. You've got to respect the other individuals, but you've got to listen to what they have to say, and then think about it, and then respond back. Listening, respect. Those are 2 key categories to me to be a good team player.
I think a willingness to learn from your mistakes and grow is really important. And to do things that are outside your comfort zone, as much as I hate saying that because I love my comfort zone. But if I look at myself when I started at the grad college in 2015 and look at myself now, I am a completely different person. And I'm way more comfortable with things that I couldn't imagine myself doing 5 years ago. And that's because I had a good team leader. And so, being a good team player is a willingness to be like, this scares me and I don't want to do it, but I'm going to try. And then once you actually succeed and accomplish that thing, then you're all of a sudden, more agile when dealing with problems. When you do make mistakes, you can learn and change. And sometimes I've made mistakes and be like, well, the reason I made this mistake was because the procedure wasn't efficient. And so then we change the procedure and the organization's happier and we save people time and we save, people stress and students, being upset about something. So I think that having those pain points and growing from them is really important to being a team player.
Yeah, learning from mistakes, listening, as Sam talked about. I think being collaborative, being always willing to help out the other team members, and whether that's with advice or maybe you have to cover for somebody at some point, being willing to help out in that way. That's part of being a good team player, and just having a positive attitude, and trying to leave the negativity behind. Still be authentic and be honest, but if you say, "God, this is really frustrating, this is terrible," but then try to follow up with, "But hey, it's an opportunity to learn, it's an opportunity to grow, and so we can get better in this way because of this challenge or whatever." So, still being authentic and honest, but also trying to put a positive outlook on things too. So, also the director for academics when I was at UNLV, he gave me a good lesson in leadership and being a team player, especially from the top, is that a lot of directors in our field, they're not going to hang around at night for study hall and monitor study hall. And our director back when I was at UNLV, he was in the rotation. In fact, he chose Sunday night study hall so that the rest of the staff didn't have to. So he was, he didn't have the attitude of, oh, well, I'm the boss, so I don't have to do that. He's like, hey, I'm going to do it. It's part of my responsibility, so I'm going to do it. The rest of you are doing it on a given night. I'll take the toughest night. I'll take Sunday when, so you can all be at home and enjoy the weekend. But I'll do that. So I thought that was a good lesson too. That he wasn't above doing some of the little things like that.
That's great. For a leader to take that responsibility and do Sunday nights, that's a good person.
Yeah.
You work well with that one.
Thank you all. So for our next question, Can you provide us with some recommendations that you have for virtual collaboration? So maybe some program suggestions, scheduling tips, or software recommendations. I know, Liz, you already mentioned Slack, how you use that for your team. But do you all have any other recommendations of things that have been working really great for your team now that we're in this virtual world?
One of the best things ever is having a complete and robust business process guide. Because when we all panicked and we had to go to remote really fast, we weren't in each other's faces helping each other. So being able to pull up that instruction sheet is so important. And my business process guide is probably like 100 pages now, and everybody hates doing them, but it's the most important document my team uses.
I work for the government, and the proverbial adage is, "Hey, I'm from the government. I'm here to help." When we went virtual, that was overnight. Who knew COVID was coming out here? And like Liz was saying, overnight this happened. And we never, we might have done one WebEx here or there or whatever, but overnight we had to go virtual. And as a team, you had to pull together. As a team, you got to roll with the punches when that stuff like that happens. If you don't, it's going to hurt. Roll with the punches, work with the team, get those ideas out there fast, get that sense of urgency out there fast, and resolve the issues and make it work. My wife is has been a special ed teacher, and we're talking about the kids going back to school and whatnot, and this is not going to work, that's not going to work. And he says, but at the end of the day, the key issue is the kids need to learn. That's the ultimate goal. So how are we going to make this work? It may be rough, but we're going to get online and we're going to try our best to do this or that and work it out. Because very quickly, we'll get to a good theme. But when you're talking about virtual meetings, the lighting and the sound. I got on early trying to make sure I was good and connected, but my video is popping in and out, and that's not good. I mean, that obviously on a virtual meeting is, for me, I like to see everybody, but the lighting and the sound. And the older I get, if I can't hear, my level of interest drops off in a heartbeat. But I can work with the scene, but if I can't hear, nah, I'm done. And I'll sit back and take a snooze or work on my emails or something. But that connection is critical. But you gotta practice, which means and we try and get our teams together regularly. But man, not everybody is comfortable during virtual. But you gotta practice that and just make it second nature.
Yeah, we transitioned to Zoom. We got accounts through the university that Monday, like March 16th, and we transitioned pretty well, just within our staff and even with our students. It went a lot smoother than I expected, where they were pretty good at doing the Zoom meetings and didn't really miss a beat. I mean, I had a student in Australia. And so the end of last spring semester, I would text him, hey, can you meet at 4 o'clock Phoenix time, Thursday / 9 a.m. Australia time on Friday, and we'd set stuff up like that. And so it worked well. We liked that. I think the one thing, as far as tips, I don't know that I really have a lot of big tips for different virtual options that are out there, but I think it's important. I'm fine being on Zoom and doing Zoom meetings. I've had some days where it's a mix of work meetings or, hey, I'll reach out to college friends or somebody I haven't talked to for a while. Hey, let's get on Zoom and just catch up. And I'm fine with it, but I know some people are dealing with, they call it like the Zoom fatigue. And so also kind of keeping that in mind as you're scheduling things, to maybe understand that not everybody's always going to be eager to be on another Zoom call if they've already been on 4 or 5 throughout the day. So trying to balance that out too, I think is something that you have to take into account right now.
Jason, you hit it on the nail too early on. Some of the simple basics things, prior to COVID, I'd pick up the phone and get on the emails, whatever. After COVID, and we're trying to go virtual, and I'm trying to work from home, or half the staff's at home, half's in the office. The simple things like time changes. You take all the ambiguity out. You have good, open, timely communication. You set everything up, And so, you know, 4 o'clock today, 9 o'clock tomorrow, you know, when you go to bed at night, you can sleep because, hey, it's all set up. I'm ready to go. That takes, to me, that takes a lot of the stress out of the daily life. And virtual meetings can work very well. But, you know, something as simple as a time change, man, you know, and I deal with guys all over the countryside. Same thing, you know, you worry, okay, now is that really 9 o'clock my time? Oh, shoot, is that 8 o'clock? No, no, you set it up right, and then you can relax and you're ready to go.
Yeah, not being scared of those like software changes, and like everybody groans when a new system is implemented or what have you. But like we moved all of our recruitment events virtually in March, which we had never done before. And I can't believe we haven't been doing virtual workshops before this, because our attendance is huge at these events. And we can do, you know, people don't have to drive to campus. They don't have to find somewhere to park. They don't have to find the building on the huge campus. They can just sit here and learn about grad school from the comfort of their own homes. They can be anonymous if they want to, if that makes them feel more comfortable. And I'm like, I can't believe we've had so much success this year, despite all the challenges of COVID. And so I will be the first to say, like, hey, I learned something here, and we've been doing really well with virtual events. So,
You know, on the inspection side of the house, you know, our inspectors are out there, you know, checking out the high rises to the residentials to whatever it may be. And we've always, the mantra was, we want to see it, feel it, touch it, you know, to make sure that it's there, that it's right, etc. And come COVID day one, you know, we couldn't get out there. And so we had to go in and do remote video inspections. You know, we use, you know, FaceTime, etc. And we debated hard on that beforehand. I said, man, that'll probably never happen. And then within, I don't know, 2 or 3 days, maybe a week, we're a remote video inspection world, and 50–60% of what we're doing is remote video. And, you know, when you get into it and you practice it, hey, it's not bad at all. I like it.
mhm.
You know, you learn something real fast.
Thank you. So we have another question from our participant in our chat. With remote work, what practices do you recommend to maintain social unity or virtual social unity among team members?
Every August we do a staff retreat, and we kind of go to a different location on campus for a couple of afternoons of meetings, and we usually do something like the DISC assessment or Strengths Quest, you know, personality assessment. So we'll do stuff like that. We'll do presentations on either work stuff or fun stuff, or sometimes it's a mix. We'll do like we've gone to a Diamondbacks game, we've gone to Top Golf, we did an escape room, things like that. So this year we did it all virtual, and it really ended up working out very well. Talked about everybody on our team kind of being a leader. Well, we had 3 fairly new staff members and then 3 veteran staff members, and I kind of relied on the 3 veterans, and we just met a few times and threw some ideas out there and put something together, and ended up going very well. We spread it out over 3 days. We even did the fun event was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We did the game virtually and had like a bracket style competition for that virtually. So you know, just being open to doing things like that, and understand that, you know, you just have to make adjustments sometimes, and we can still do a lot of the same content just in more of a virtual setting. So we have been in the office together a few times. We did have lunch together at the on the last day of that staff retreat. You know, picking your spots for being able to get together in person. We try to look for those opportunities as well. But yeah, I think that was kind of the big thing for us as far as the social unity piece of it was moving that staff retreat online.
Yeah, we have a group chat with our team, and I didn't even ask them to start doing this, but they say good morning to each other every morning, like, morning, how's your night? And then before the end of the day, everybody's saying, like, have a good night, guys. And so it's kind of like happened naturally, and like tonight they're going to say, have a good weekend. And like, we talk about our weekend plans and things like that. And so the group chat doesn't have to be just for work stuff. You know, we're trading jokes and different things all day long. So I think we've done a pretty good job of like just keeping everybody on the same page and, you know, in a good positive attitude. And it just can be like little small things like that, like saying good morning to each other and acknowledging that you're all there.
Yep, that's great. When you can talk to each other, you call it the water cooler talk or talking, you know, the coffee break talk, whatever. That's so critical to the success of the team. You know, when you can break bread and sit there and have lunch or dinner with your team, that's excellent. You know, people are people. They're human beings. We need the social interaction. I'm going stir crazy, you know, in this COVID environment. When I come home on the weekends and you got to quote unquote sequester yourself to the house, etc. You know, I'm used to being able to get out there and see people. At least with the virtual side of it, you can see a little bit more of what's going on and develop those relationships. We had a virtual birthday party for a good friend of mine. She threw it, and I joined in on it. It was great, you know, because it was different. At least you got to see the face and hear their voices. So that was nice.
Thank you all. So we are coming towards the end of our time together today. But before we end, I just want to give a huge thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Your advice was extremely valuable on this very important topic that's relevant to all of us in our daily lives. Thank you to all of our participants for joining us to learn something new today. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next workshop. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Very good.
everybody.
Thank you.
See you, everybody.